The Club World Cup has finished, but was the Club World Cup any good? What did it get right and what did it get so wrong? How can it be better next time? What does it mean for next year's actual World Cup? And does this finally prove Europe is the best football continent? The answers to all these questions and much more in this video. Let's get into it. So, not only are we now allegedly in a new era of football, according to FIFA, and let's be honest, Infantino, we have just witnessed FIFA's new prime club competition. Big talk. And talk, it will not surprise you to hear, I am somewhat skeptical of, though perhaps not quite as skeptical as Jurgen Klopp. But you know what? Let's pause any cynicism for the moment, but don't worry, there'll be plenty of that later. Let's have a nice, wholesome look at the Club World Cup and highlight some of the positives from this tournament. By far and away, the biggest success of this tournament is the variety of the teams participating and therefore of the matchups between teams. It has been genuinely good fun to see South American teams take on European teams, to see what sort of standard the top teams from other continents actually are. And it was exceptionally good fun to watch a team of semi-pros take on and draw with a club as historic as Boca Juniors. More than just good fun, as it was for me as a Brit, for South Americans, and more specifically Brazilians, and for fans of clubs from other continents, there has been very clear joy in seeing their teams not only share a pitch with these titans of the European game, but actually compete and in some cases rightly beat these European clubs. These are European clubs that have for some time now been signing their best players at younger and younger ages, so it's hard to begrudge these clubs their immense pride at embarrassing their far richer European counterparts. Another positive is that, for the most part, match-going fans, when they've actually turned up, more on that later, have bought into this competition. There have been some pretty fun atmospheres with travelling fans bringing a lot of noise and local American fans clearly being delighted to see teams they know and support up close and personal, as well as seeing their own MLS teams with some classic chants that we all know and love. This competition has also seen a lot of innovations. Some good, maybe some not so good. But one I've really enjoyed is ref cams. Now this has popped up every now and then elsewhere, but this is the first tournament I've seen where they've been widely used in the TV coverage, and it's been great fun. It's a cool angle to see football from, as close as we can get before going all computer chip in player's brain to getting a player's eye view of the match. Moreover, it's had the significant benefit of reinforcing how whiny footballers are and how difficult the referee's job is in managing this whininess and keeping up with the pace of the game and a million other things as well. I have also really enjoyed the novelty of free-to-air club football. Here in the UK, and to a lesser extent in much of Europe, the idea of getting to watch top clubs on free TV or streaming is a pipe dream. Yes, we get the occasional FA Cup game, but this has been a whole tournament either streamed for free on DAZN or on actual TV in the UK, albeit that TV has been Channel 5, whose other programmes include such masterpieces as Bargain-Loving Brits in the Sun, Call the Bailiffs, and the excellent When Motorways Go Horribly Wrong. As you non-Brits can imagine, that's premium programming the Club World Cup is rubbing shoulders with. I also think it's been fun to see a few new players and managers for clubs. There's always some level of curiosity to see if these guys are any good and whether there are any signs they're gelling well with their teammates, and not just for Fantasy Premier League purposes, I promise. I suspect FIFA knew this might well be part of the appeal for people watching, which is why they've included multiple registration windows for clubs to register new signings, which is, let's be honest, a bit odd. While it's true that pre-season friendlies essentially achieve all of this without the need for a massive tournament, I don't find myself watching the pre-season games of clubs I do not support, and in all honesty, I only watch a few of the club I do support. So this tournament has provided a little peek into the players of next season for me in a way I wouldn't normally have access to or be bothered to have access to. Relatedly, it's always fun to see a new rule applied and the chaos and confusion that pops up when it does, as in the case of the new 8-second rule prophesized in one of my earlier, slightly roughly edited videos, link on screen for that one. And that's most of the positives for this tournament. But I want to end this section by saying very plainly that I think the Club World Cup is, in theory, a good idea. And anecdotally, most people I've spoken to who aren't keen on this competition are in agreement that in theory, it's a good idea. They just have little interest in the way the tournament has been established in reality. And because of this, because of the fact that I think in theory this could be a great tournament, later on in this video, I'm going to explore some possible solutions and tweaks that could be made to the Club World Cup to make it more of a success the next time it is held. Oh, and it will be held again. Even its most passionate haters must concede that we can't can't put the genie back in the bottle anymore. The Club World Cup is here to stay. And you know who else could be here to stay? Well, you guys, if you hit that subscribe button. That way you'll get more football content when a video is posted. And while you're down there, please do give the video a like if you're enjoying it. We're only a small channel, so any support you give really goes a long way. Anyway, the fact that I am proposing solutions for the Club World Cup at the end of this video does imply that I think it might have some problems. So it is to those problems that I now turn. I'll start with some more subjective, small fry stuff that I didn't enjoy but can see others enjoying, and then build to what I take to be the more serious problems the Club World Cup has to wrestle with. So, first on the small fry list, I'm sorry guys, but superior player of the match is the lamest possible way of saying man or player of the match. In fact, the only lamer way of saying it is the actual full sponsor title name, the Michelob Ultra Superior Player of the Match. Yes, I know it's named after the beer that sponsors the award, but honestly, that name feels like it came from a boardroom discussion exclusively made up of people who unironically think of themselves as Sigma and Alpha males. It's just lame, sorry. On a similar note of lameness, perhaps it works in other sports, but this whole each player coming out individually and then lining up and facing each other with a frankly tacky golden FIFA sign between them and in front of them doesn't work for me. We don't need an individual hype entrance for every player on every team, as if they're some wrestler back from the dead. Much though I rate Dewsbury Hall as a footballer, he doesn't need a hype entrance. And just briefly on a slightly more serious note here, I think stuff like this is more evidence of the shift in focus of football coverage from being about teams and the fact that this is a team game to being about individuals, as the increasing focus on individual awards like the Ballon d'Or also indicate. I'm also not a fan of when DAZN cuts to some adverts that play simultaneously during a substitution. I think that feels worryingly like testing the waters for full-blown, full-screen adverts during substitution breaks for me. And finally, in my old man yells at cloud saga, I'm not a fan of having a live chat when I'm watching a stream of football, but that is because I'm old. I appreciate that many of you grew up and love that sort of media. Lastly, for the small time stuff, halftime shows just don't work at football, sorry. The fans aren't interested in live music when their team is halfway through a cup final, and this is why performances are at best ignored, and at worst, booed or jeered until the performer is completely drowned out. With these relatively small fry things out of the way, let's talk about some of the more major problems with this tournament. Here's one significant problem: the money. As I said in my previous video on the Club World Cup, link above, the sheer amount of money on offer for this tournament is absurd. $1 billion. $1 billion that is not only, interestingly sourced. After struggling to get any TV interest in covering the competition, here in the UK, ITV and BBC, our two biggest broadcasters, have passed it up, FIFA somehow managed to secure a $1 billion deal with DAZN. The same DAZN who had previously sold a stake of itself to the Saudi Arabian Sovereign Wealth Fund for $1 billion. The money is handed out to teams that have qualified through an at best weird process and at worst very questionable process. And this is serious money. The winners, the plucky underdogs of Chelsea, have earned just under £100 million, while Man City, who were knocked out in the first knockout round, have pocketed a little under £40 million. The two Brazilian quarter-finalists earned $30 million each by the time they made it to the quarter-final. Aside from this money's interesting origins and the tournament's dubious qualification process that allows only certain clubs the opportunity to get this money, the money is also a negative of the Club World Cup for other reasons. One is this weird clause that FIFA have inserted when dividing the money up between clubs that they have opaquely called a, quote, ranking based on sporting and commercial criteria, end quote. In practice, this means that clubs from different continents are paid different amounts just for turning up, predictably with Europe and then South America being paid the most and Oceania being paid the least. And that clubs from Europe are being paid different amounts just for turning up. I'll let you guess which club is getting paid the most, but here's a hint. It's the one you're all thinking of. And all of this seems wrong, right? First, it's super weird for FIFA of all bodies to reward clubs for their commercial appeal, for their capacity to sell shirts or get bums on seats. This is the sport's governing body, for God's sake. It shouldn't be handing out more money to clubs because they've got a great PR team. The clubs get enough benefit from having great commercial appeal because by definition this gets them more money. They don't need FIFA further enforcing this advantage. It's a worryingly slippery slope to see the sport's governing body openly reward commercial viability when this should only ever be about sporting prowess. Second, unsurprisingly, the more commercially viable your club is, the richer your club is. So this decision to give more commercially viable clubs more money only helps the rich get richer and further entrenches the increasingly massive financial gaps we have in football, which should be worrying for anyone with any interest in actual competitive leagues and cups. Third, doesn't this rewarding the big club stuff stuff sort of go entirely against what a Club World Cup should be about? This should be a celebration of the world of football, about the variety of clubs and how the game has spread across the globe and been taken into the heart of billions of people. The idea that, actually, some clubs are more important to have there and therefore we should pay them more to make sure they turn up seems pretty gross in comparison. And the final point I want to make about money, I promise, is that the money these clubs are winning is likely to distort or further distort their local leagues. When you're bringing home 10, 20, 30 million, while the rest of the clubs in your league are sitting on their hands, that is obviously going to give you a massive advantage, especially in leagues not as used to that amount of money as the European leagues. Though, even in the European leagues, there is a lot of anger about the clubs in the Club World Cup getting so much money compared to those that are not in the Club World Cup, such that the ones who are not in the Club World Cup are actually lobbying for a bigger Club World Cup, just so that they can get in on this prize pot. The money, or rather the way it's distributed, seems to me to be a significant negative of the Club World Cup. But I think another significant problem will start to show itself after the various clubs go back to playing league games. This is the problem of injuries and fatigue. The tournament saw 2 high-profile, seemingly serious injuries in Musiala and Rodri, but I suspect there is worse to come. Obviously, the players that have taken part in these Club World Cup games have now played a fair few games more than those who have not participated. And, in the case of European clubs at least, they've played these games when normally they would be sitting on a beach relaxing, as they really should do after a long season. And this will start showing next season. Already players were saying they were playing too many games before this Club World Cup even existed. But now they're playing even more games, and that's going to start showing, both in terms of tired performances from these players and their teams, and, unless clubs are very savvy with their rotation, in an increase in muscle and fatigue related injuries. I think this is a very serious issue with the Club World Cup, as do various players and managers and players' unions, with the PFA going so far as to pursue legal action against FIFA for this increase in games. Injuries and money are 2 problems with the Club World Cup that anyone could see happening before it even started, including me in the previous video. But here's one problem that emerged over the course of the tournament that I didn't really see coming: the weather. So please indulge the cliche of an English person talking about the weather. The problems with the weather have come in 2 forms: the heat and the storms, which incidentally sounds like the sort of spy book your dad would buy at the airport right before you go on holiday. Hey, it's me editing Theorising Football here. You're not going to believe it, but that book genuinely exists. And it's classic dad at the airport spy novel stuff. I honestly did not know about it when I put that line in the script. Amazing. Anyway, back to the video. Hope you're enjoying it so far. In respect to the heat, 1,000,001 people have complained about the absurdly hot conditions for players on the pitch, for fans off the pitch, and indeed for players off the pitch. This has certainly had an effect on the quality of matches, with players clearly not being able to put in the sort of effort they could in less warm climates. For example, the Juventus manager, Igor Tudor, revealed that 10 of his players asked to be substituted off in their loss to Real Madrid in the knockouts, though I'm sure that's not the first time the Juventus team wanted to get out of somewhere as soon as possible during the time in the US. In respect to the storms, this tournament has seen a remarkably large amount of games suspended for considerable periods of time because of incoming potentially dangerous storms. Now, of course, safety here is paramount. It's not that long ago, only last year even, that we saw a player, Hugo de la Cruz, hit and killed by lightning during a football match in Peru. That was obviously a tragedy, and thus taking players indoors and encouraging fans into the concourses is the correct course of action when a storm is brewing. Nobody's denying that. However, as many people have pointed out, including an irate Maresca in one of the most notable weather incidents of the tournament, Chelsea's 2-hour delay with 86 minutes played against Benfica, suspending a football game for this long is, quoting Maresca here, not football. Part of football is the knowledge that this is going to be a near continuous game for 90 minutes or so, with only one 15-minute stoppage. The idea that the game could be stopped at other times, and perhaps more than once, for lengths of time far more considerable than 15 minutes, is a truly fundamental change to the sport and what it tests as a competition. The type of player that excels changes, from one that can run for 90 minutes to one that can run even faster and even harder, but they need that storm-induced break after 25 minutes. The preparation for players all changes. They need to warm up, they need to warm down, they need to sort their eating out, they need to sort their resting out, all of that changes. And of course, tactically, frequent long breaks are odd. In that Chelsea-Benfica game, Benfica managed to use the final 4 minutes plus a bit of stoppage time to force a penalty and the extension of the game into extra time, much to the chagrin of lots of very bored pundits and football commentators, I'm sure. And doubtless Benfica's manager and assistant spent the entire break cooking up ways of finally getting through Chelsea, and then having 2 hours to explain this to each individual player in excruciating detail. And it worked. Away from the players and coaches, think about the fans. It's certainly a pain in the arse for those of us who are sat at home who've set aside time to watch a game, especially if it's kicking off very late in the evening or very early in the morning. Even more affected, of course, are those fans in the stadium, who must now find a way to kill 2 hours in the concourses of stadiums, often without anywhere to sit and nothing to eat or drink that isn't going to bankrupt them. To say nothing of the choices they must now make between seeing the end of the game or attending previously made commitments that are now in danger thanks to the game overrunning. In my previous video on the Club World Cup, I suggested that this Club World Cup was sort of a dress rehearsal for the actual World Cup next year, which of course is largely held in the US as well. And in respect to the weather, this has been a helpful dress rehearsal. The World Cup is scheduled to be held around the same time of year as the Club World Cup and will share quite a few of the stadiums, so we should expect similar issues around heat and storms. Now, I don't want to over-egg it. Some stadiums will be fine, and even some this year that did have storm breaks are fairly unlikely to have them again. But it is nevertheless true that we can expect the weather to be a little bit of a talking point next year. So if you're going to the stadium, bring a folding chair, and if you're watching at home, maybe bring a book and put that next to the TV remote. And despite it being a year out, there's no real easy solution here. We can't control the weather, we can't move the World Cup, the logistics of this are horrible, and even if another country volunteered, there is no way FIFA, and again, Infantino, would allow it. He and Trump are pretty good buddies. We also can't change the kickoff times to cooler parts of the day. That would make viewing the matches in other continents very difficult. Games kicking off at 2 AM or 3 AM, for example, which, aside from the obvious concern for fans, sponsors will not allow. World Cup sponsors don't pay all that money just to have their biggest audience, the relatively wealthy and football-obsessed Europeans, not see the games, and therefore not see the adverts and sponsorships. You could try to move where in the States these games are taking place, but good luck winning the fight with the corporate behemoths behind US stadiums. So, not only was the weather a significant problem for the Club World Cup, but it's looking a bit ominous for the actual World Cup. And I think, for the purposes of this video, that's all I want to say in regard to the problems the Club World Cup had. Yeah, there are a few others I could mention. I could, for example, say that I find Infantino and his demand that everything is about him, no matter what he is doing, absolutely insufferable. But I'm being the bigger man and absolutely not saying that. Instead, before we look at how to improve this tournament moving forward, here's a few more things I wanted to highlight about the tournament that don't necessarily fall into the positive or negative categories we've just covered. First, as predicted in my previous video on this topic, we very nearly had Cristiano Ronaldo in this tournament, with at least one club, River Plate, confirming they offered him a place on their squad. While this may have got the tournament more viewers, I think it's undoubtedly a good thing for the seriousness and reputation of this tournament that clubs didn't temporarily sign him. Second, did you see this weird story about people uploading fake highlights of the Club World Cup with bizarre scorelines? They basically clipped up players scoring goals and pasted them all together, claiming it was all from one match despite these clips all being from different matches. What's more, they uploaded this before the games even kicked off to make sure they were top of the YouTube search list. I mean, obviously this isn't good, but you've got to admire the balls of a scheme like this. Third, I just want to have a brief word on an argument I keep seeing crop up, largely between South Americans and Europeans, about the degree to which the results of this tournament mean anything about the relative strength of the football leagues involved. Caricatures of both sides of this argument are the Europeans saying it means nothing, none of our players are trying, so we can't draw any conclusions about, for example, Brazilian clubs being better than Italian clubs if the former beats the latter. And the caricature of the South American side being every time any non-European club beats, draws, or even gets close to a European side, it is evidence that European football isn't the best club football. As usual with most arguments like this, the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. It's true that European sides aren't trying as hard as they would in the League or Champions League, and that as a result we shouldn't jump to too many conclusions about their strength relative to their opponents. But it's also true that these European clubs are still trying to an extent, as anyone who has watched some of these matches will know. There is still professional pride here, and in many cases genuine anger and frustration as their opposite number skins them or fouls them. So it's not as if these games mean nothing in terms of assessing the relative strength of these leagues. I've certainly been impressed and surprised by a fair few non-European clubs. More importantly though, arguments like this totally miss the most significant problem with making these assessments based on the Club World Cup. You can't make these assessments based on a one-off match. No one thinks Auckland City would be winning league titles in Argentina on the basis of there having a one-off draw with Boca in this tournament. Just as no one thinks a giant killing in the FA Cup means that actually the minnow team is definitively better than the giant team. So nor should we jump to these conclusions in the Club World Cup either. Finally, for this section, a word on the attendance and the quality of the games and tournament as a whole, all of which I'm putting in the category of a mixed bag. There have been some very poor attendances throughout the whole tournament, but there have also been some very well attended games, as well as some very good excuses for the poorly attended games. Teams even the most seasoned football fans don't really know much about, kickoff times where most people are at work, for a significant section of fans, the very real fear that they could encounter ICE agents, and often absurd ticket prices, though admittedly there were some absurdly cheap ones as well. So the attendance is kind of a mixed bag. If, like me, you don't think this tournament was a particularly big deal, then this level of attendance is sort of to be expected. However, if you aren't like me, and instead you're desperate for this tournament to be a big deal, then I think the frequent lack of attendance is likely to be heartbreaking. And this is how I feel about the quality of the Club World Cup's games and the tournament as a whole. It's been okay, which is unremarkable for me as someone who was expecting it to be an essentially average experience. Again, akin to something like a long Community Shield. But for someone really invested in this, really invested in the idea that this will be a stunning football spectacle, a new era for club football, then it would be hard to classify it as anything other than a disappointment. So with that said, on to what the next Club World Cup should look like. As I've already said, I think broadly speaking, the idea of a Club World Cup is a good thing. We all love the actual World Cup. Why can't the Club World Cup be something similar? A celebration of the global game and a test of competing football cultures and leagues. So please indulge me for a second while I do what we do best here on Theorising Football and theorise about how to improve the Club World Cup. As I see it, improving the Club World Cup revolves around three main considerations, assuming of course that in the future we pick a country with less extreme weather. These are money, increased games, and reputation. The more minor problems I brought up earlier probably aren't going to be the sort of thing that make or break the Club World Cup. So you know what? You can keep your newfangled streams with chats and all the other things that make me feel like the world's oldest man. Now, I've explained the problems with money and increased games already, so it's worth briefly explaining what I mean here by reputation. Here I'm referring to the split in reputation that this competition definitely has, with some continents taking it very seriously as potentially the most important trophy available. Most notably here I'm talking about South American clubs, and some continents essentially seeing this as something akin to the Community Shield, slightly more than a friendly but considerably less important than the league or domestic cups, let alone something like the Champions League. Most notably here this captures much, though apparently not all, of the sentiment of European clubs and fans, with other continents broadly somewhere in between these two South American and European poles. And the thing is, these three factors, money, reputation and increased games, all interact with one another and impact how successful the Club World Cup could be. At present, the worldwide reputation of this tournament isn't anywhere near prestigious enough to convince clubs to turn up and play all these new increased games. The money is a shortcut to getting these clubs, to getting all clubs to turn up, and thereby, in the short to medium term, the money grows the reputation of the tournament by guaranteeing all prestigious clubs turn up. So unless FIFA wants to wait at least 50 or so years and cross their fingers that the reputation of this tournament grows organically without significant amounts of money pumped into it, and trust me, they don't want to do that, then the money has to stay. The money sorts the reputation, or at least is likely to sort it out in the short to medium term, by guaranteeing every big team actually arrives at the tournament, and then you rely on the professional pride of players to take the game seriously enough until the point where the tournament has a genuine reputation and players actually really want to win it. But I've spent a significant portion of this video, and the previous video, slagging off the money. So how do we deal with that? Well, fortunately, my problem was not necessarily with the money, it was with its distribution. So a relatively simple fix is available. You divide the money equally, even if this means paying a lot to countries not used to this amount of money. And to stop it distorting leagues too much, a solidarity payment would have to be paid to the leagues that these clubs come from, to be distributed in such a way that there is still a reward for turning up to the Club World Cup, but one that doesn't absolutely destroy any semblance of competition on a domestic level. Obviously, the exact details of this split will have to be worked out on a league-by-league basis, but FIFA is doing something similar with Auckland City and their league. Of course, such a solution would require giving out a lot more money, because you'd have to find the number that European clubs are happy to attend the Club World Cup for, which would be a big number, and then agree to pay every single club there the same amount. And there are serious questions about whether FIFA will get lucky enough to have the recently Saudi-invested DAZN stump up $1 billion for the broadcasting rights again. But nevertheless, Christ knows FIFA has a lot of money regardless of whether DAZN get involved. And if the Club World Cup started to get a good reputation, then FIFA would get even more money, which it could then distribute equally. So I think the money can be sorted, the problems I had with the money at least. And as I've already established, the money should help with the reputation, at least in the short to medium term, until the Club World Cup gets itself a genuinely exciting reputation in the bits of the world that are currently not that bothered by it. So that's 2 down, but what about our third concern, the increase in fixtures and the increase in games played? There's a few solutions available here. One is moving the tournament so that it isn't being held when players are supposed to be having a rest. Obviously, the trouble with this solution is that different countries play at different times of the year, so moving it, for example, out of the summer and into the winter would be to take it from the European break and put it in the Brazilian break. Further, even when this competition took place during the season, like when it took place around Christmas time, it still got a lot of frustration from fans in Europe who didn't want to see their team jet off in the middle of an important part of the league season. So simply moving the tournament doesn't seem to solve anything because it just brings different types of problems. Not that it looks like FIFA care particularly. An alternative solution is to reduce the amount of matches players play outside of the Club World Cup. This is doubtless something they've been asking for a while now. We'd do this by reducing the size of leagues or by cutting down or out completely cups such as the League Cup. I'm not particularly fond of this idea. I think it would punish clubs who don't attend the Club World Cup. But even if I were a fan of this idea, good luck getting other clubs to agree to cutting down their opportunities to play matches, make money and win trophies, because a couple of clubs will play too many games every 4 years. There are variations of this solution that are marginally more palatable, such as only cancelling those cups in the 1 in 4 years the Club World Cup happens, or requiring that clubs who are set to play in the Club World Cup pull out of their domestic cups, or perhaps are legally required to play players who won't play in the Club World Cup, as Liverpool sort of did a few years ago. But again, this will never happen. Clubs and domestic FAs simply won't be dictated to in that way, and nor should they be in my view. Instead, if the Club World Cup is going to stick around, and again I would have no problem with that, I think the best possible solution to this increase in games is to, drumroll please, decrease the increase. By which I mean keep the Club World Cup, but make it smaller. Reduce the amount of games required. You can do that one of 2 ways. Either you reduce the amount of teams, or you eliminate the group stage. I think I'm probably in favour of doing both. We surely don't need 12 European teams in the Club World Cup. Keep representatives from all continents, but reduce the sheer amount of teams and then make it a straight knockout tournament like it used to be. That way you don't add too many games on for, let's be honest, a relatively pointless group stage. This solution would allow you to keep a slightly bigger tournament than it used to be, something FIFA clearly want, but not go so big that it is a genuine risk to players to play all the way through the tournament. I think if FIFA made these changes moving forward, the Club World Cup would be a far better tournament. It would grow to become something well respected by clubs and nations throughout the world and be something people actually looked forward to watching, as opposed to whatever it is right now. But what do you guys think? Did you enjoy the Club World Cup? What did you like or not like about it? Would you change anything for next time? If you enjoyed the video, please do leave a like and subscribe for more football videos. We're only a small channel, so your support really does make a big difference. Here's a couple of other videos to watch next. Thanks for watching.